nobody on this road that can save your soul. Almost lost control now. Tell me what you need in a friend and now. Pray that we endure to the end again. I'm just saying that I'm here for you. When the world turn against you, I'ma be with you. Got my soul in my hand, you can count on me. I won't run and hide, fight mightily.
Waiting on your house shot. See the Jacob, I'm the apple of my father's eye. I learned the truth for who I was and it made me cry. If I don't keep the laws of Yah, then I'm gonna die. Living curses, but I'm edifying in my verses. Prepare the hearses for the heathens who be standing.
Call of Yahweh by Shema Mashiach, woman like O.F.I on this mighty day. We just came off of a mighty feast day. All praise to the Most High Yahweh by Shema O.F.I. Always a blessing to give a sacrifice to the Most High, a free will offering, and teach, and for the Most High to put these things on our spirit. For the 12 tribes are scattered abroad, greetings. Of course, first and foremost, got to give all praises to our Lord, our Savior, the Most High. Like you, all praise to the Most High in the name of His only begotten Son and our Savior, Hamashiach, woman like O.F.I. You know, today is something that I wanted to share called the Indigenous Peoples Day, as they call it, the Indigenous Peoples Day. And you know, as we've been teaching, we've been getting quite a few people asking us, you know, why do we include the so-called North Americans? Why do we include the so-called Indians, as they say, right? Hey, why are y'all including the Indians? Are they our people? No, the so-called Native Americans, Israelites, straight up and down. That's what they've been asking. And a lot of people have actually been saying that they're not. We've been getting a lot of people scoffing sometimes, asking the same things like, hey, okay, why are y'all including the so-called Native Americans? They're not our people. You know, what's kind of going on with y'all, right? And so we hear through the scriptures, through the history, through the prophecy, through the spirit and power of the Most High, Lord willing, tonight put that to rest, right? This is going to be a multi-part series. It's damn near impossible to go into it all in just one sitting. I would say that it's damn near impossible to go and to get it all in one setting, straight up and down. So, as you know, or may not know, today was the Indigenous Peoples Day, which is straight BS, y'all. Because first of all, how can you diminish a whole nation and kingdom of mighty men and women and children to just an Indigenous Peoples Day? And we do know that they celebrate this in mainstream American culture as Christopher Columbus Day, right? So don't be deceived. They only put Indigenous People Day because they were getting a lot of backlash for, you know, making this Christopher Columbus Day, right? So I want to show y'all something. Christopher Columbus Day. Now, when you get into this, look, Indigenous People Day and Columbus Day are observed on the second Monday in October, but represent two very different traditions. Columbus Day is a federal holiday that commemorates Christopher Columbus's arrival in the Americas in 1492, while Indigenous Peoples Day is a celebration of Native American history and culture and a response to the violence and oppression that followed Columbus' arrival. And this is the problem with America, man, right? You know, America is double-minded, right? America is double-minded. Let me get this quick precept. James 1:8. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. This whole culture of America, the whole mind frame and mentality of America is damn unstable. How are you going to celebrate the oppressor's victory on the same day and in the same breath that you say you're acknowledging the history and the heritage of those who the oppressor raped, robbed, and murdered. It doesn't make any sense, family. And this is why America got to go down, right? This is why Babylon the whore got to burn, because it just doesn't make any sense. The wickedness in the mind frame, right? And the confusion. Babylon is the land of confusion. All right, do you want to celebrate Christopher Columbus, or do you want to celebrate the indigenous people who he raped, robbed, murdered, pillaged, afflicted with diseases, right? All of these things are in the Bible. And this goes in to show you that this is even the fulfillment of prophecy of what happened to our Northern Kingdom brothers. Now, it's a long historical timeline of events, a chain of events that lead up to the prophecy of Genesis, the 49th chapter, where the Most High expressly told Gad that he would be overcome. So when a lot of you brothers and sisters are, when you're on Negro only and all of these things, you're actually denying prophecy, because the so-called Native Americans, they are undoubtedly Israelites. Let's get this prophecy. Book of Genesis, chapter 49 and verse 19. Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. Now, what is this going into? We know that there's a long history of wars that happened to our so-called Native American brothers and sisters. Let's not forget, we know, and we touched on this on last Manna Monday, right? How our Northern Kingdom brothers and sisters already were over here. See, a lot of you brothers and sisters, a lot of you Hebrew Israelites, a lot of you Israelites, my Israelite brothers and sisters, y'all like the other nations, y'all don't study history. To your shame. You don't take the time, and I myself have been guilty of this, and am guilty of this, of not taking the time to do a deep dive into what's called world history, right? Into a deep dive into biblical events and biblical history and how it lines up with certain events, cultures, right? And things that are pushed out in mainstream academia, all right? So Gad, being the so-called Native Americans, the descendants of Gad, the Gadites, a troop shall overcome him. Now, when did this happen? When did a troop overcome Gad? Is this only talking about in the ancient world? Or is this also talking about in the modern day world? This is emphatically talking about our so-called Native American brothers and sisters. They were overcome and overthrown in multiple wars. And we're going to get into some of these wars tonight, shedding a history on the so-called Indians, the so-called Native Americans, the Northern Kingdom of Israel. But in the end, right? But he shall overcome at the last. What is this going into? There's a time when Hamashiach Yahushua comes back and gathers the tribe, that Gad and the Gadites are going to be standing there strong, fighting and overcoming and getting the kingdom and getting the promise, the covenant that we entered into way back then. The Gadites are also going to share in that glory by Shem HaMashiach. So if you're a Negro only, meaning that you only think that the so-called African Americans make up all 12 tribes, you are sadly mistaken, brother. You are sadly mistaken, sir. And that even goes back. I'm going to get this quick precept really quick in Isaiah 11 and 13. It really goes back to almost like pre-Willie Lynch, before Willie Lynch was Willie Lynch. Be like, I want to get this real quick. I'm going to start with the precept. There's something called the Willie Lynch letters, right? Which we're going to touch on here. Well, before there was ever even a Willie Lynch letters, and I believe it was a plantation owner in the West Indies or something. Before all of that, the Most High God had already set this in motion. You have to understand when certain things happen from a historical context, right? It's not the people who are deciding these things on their own will, on their own volition, on their own thought. It's the Most High God who has been set things up, right, from aforetime, and it comes to fruition through the spirits that He allows to incarnate, right, to regenerate Salakia back on the earth, right? So when you say that the Northern Kingdom, the so-called Native Americans, aren't your people, this goes back to Isaiah 11 and 13. It goes back further to the curses of Deuteronomy. That's having your eye evil towards your brother. To fix your black knot, to fix your lips though, and to fix your mind to be in a position to say that an Israelite is not an Israelite, that's wicked. That's wicked. Because what you're doing is you're actually perpetuating the lie. You're furthering the affliction. And you have an identity crisis. And we're going to pray for you, brothers and sisters. Isaiah 11 and 13. The envy also of Ephraim shall depart, and the adversaries of Judah shall be cut off. Now notice, there's been beef in between the northern and southern kingdom. At one point in time, you had the northern kingdom, in league with the Assyrians to help whoop on or try to conquer the southern kingdom. So this spirit has been already manifested, this mind frame, this wicked spirit, to try to separate us, y'all. There's enough separation already going on between the tribes. It says, and the adversaries of Judah shall be cut off. That even means, keep this, if you're northern kingdom, right, and you're bucking up against the southern kingdom, that means you're becoming an enemy of the southern kingdom. The Most High will cut you off, right? Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah shall not protect Ephraim. And this is a prophecy, y'all. See, right now, we understand why brothers and sisters ain't coming together. Because it's like when you think about when Yahweh, because Yahweh is that vine, right? And when you think about when a seed is planted and when it's watered and when it starts to blossom and the fruit starts as a flower. In agriculture, a lot of fruit actually starts off as a flower, right? And when you see that flower start, I'm gonna get this real quick. When you see that flower blooms into fruit. When you see in agriculture, right? You see so many different types of look at this, strawberries, for an example. The strawberry actually starts as a flower, and then that flower blooms and blossoms into a strawberry. See that? Look at this. Same thing right here. You have mango. I believe this is a mango. It starts off as a flower with dragon fruit. It starts off as a flower. So the point of the matter is, right now, we're in that flowering stage. We're on the vine of Yahweh. But there's going to come a time where that flower is going to blossom into fruit. And that fruit is going to begin to nourish other brothers and sisters up with the understanding by Shema Mashiach Gomalak Yahushai to even turn from the wicked mind frame of separation and of telling your Israelite brothers and sisters that they're not the children of God, that they're not Israelites. And that's what's going on, right? Walking in darkness, walking in the darkness of ignorance. And Lord willing, right, the Most High, well, let me get this, Acts 11 and 30, right? Salakia. Salakia. second, bear with me. That's not what I want. I had a trying to think of. X 17 and 30 is what I want. Flock the X 17 and 30. Let me share them right here. Bear with me. Bear with me. Bear with me. Bear with me. Damn, that's Acts 17 and 30. In the time of this ignorance, Yahweh winked at them, now commanded all men to repent. The Lord willing, brothers and sisters, repent as they bring forth more knowledge to understand what's really going down with with our brothers and sisters, right? I'm going to get into this really quick, Lord willing. There are a lot of wars that happen when we say Gad should be overcome by a troop, right? You had the Indian Wars east of the Mississippi, and we're going to go over a couple of these wars between the Gadites and the so-called white men. So east of the Mississippi between 1775 and roughly 1842, there were around, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 main wars, ending with the Second Seminole War, right? So starting off, you have the American Revolutionary War. Now, in the American Revolutionary War, you had, at the conclusion of the French and Indian War, Great Britain won uncontested influence over the region between the Atlantic coast colonies and the Mississippi River. The Ohio River marked a tenuous border between the American colonies and the American Indians of the Ohio country. The Proclamation of 1763 forbade British colonists from settling west of the Appalachian Mountains in order to prevent conflict between Indians and colonists in the vast territory, newly acquired from France. Now, mind you, even far before, the occupation of the British, you had the French over here. So you had the French and the Indian Wars, right? So settlers and land speculators in Britain and America objected to this restriction. However, and so British officials negotiated 2 treaties with American Indians in 1768. Now, this. If you look at the timeline, right, 1768, you might think like, okay, well, 1768, all right, before the Declaration of Independence, before America's independence, you already had wars and skirmishes breaking out in between the Northern Kingdom and in between the Edomite colonialist white settlers. Remind you, we're going over these wars to show the manifestation of the prophecies that Gad would be overtaken by a troop. Who are the Gadites? The Gadites are the so-called North American Indians, right? And when you also get into that, you'll notice that you have the Reubenites as well, which we'll touch on too as well, who are the Seminoles, right? The Seminole Indians. Now, mind you, a point in time, the so-called North American Indians, the Gadites, as we know, and the Seminole Indians, right? They controlled all of America, all of the America. Lucky, Arshrit, that was known as Turtle Island, different names the Americans have been called. Well, we're going through the history of some of the wars. So in 1776, so from 1775 to about 1783, you had the whole American Revolutionary War, right? Overlapping that from 1776 to about 1794, you had what's called the Cherokee American War. So the Cherokee American War, also known as Chickamauga War, were a series of raids, campaigns, ambushes, minor skirmishes, and several full-scale frontier battles in the Old Southwest. From 1776 to 1794, between the Cherokee and American settlers on the frontier. Most of the events took place in the Upper South region, right? That's where you get over here, the Upper South region. While the fighting stretched across the entire period, there were extended periods with little or no action, right? So the Cherokee leaders, famous Cherokee leader, right? Dragging Canoe, who some earlier historians called the Savage Napoleon, and his warriors and other Cherokee fought alongside warriors from several other tribes. Most often the Muskogee, I think I'm pronouncing that right, in the Old Southwest, and the Shawnee in the Old Northwest. During the Revolutionary War, because you see a crossover or overlap of time frames between Cherokee American Wars and the Revolutionary Wars, they also fought alongside British troops, Loyalist militia, and the King's Carolina Rangers against the rebel colonies, hoping to expel them from the territory. So you have, once again, another major war, the Cherokee American War. And oftentimes when you think about various, Slovakia, I'm on the wrong side. When you think about various Native American tribes and things of that nature, there's some certain tribes that come to mind that are more prevalent than others. You hear about the Cherokee, the Muskogee, you hear about now I'm drawing a brain fart, right? They're called the 5 tribal nations, right? You got the Cherokee, the Seminoles, the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, and the Creek. So these were the 5 nations of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy: Mohawk, the Oneida, the Onondaga, the Cayuga, and the Seneca. So these are what they call the civilized tribes, right? Which is crazy in itself. And then the 5 civilized tribes in the Southeast United States, you see they say the Cherokee, the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, the Muskogee, which are the same as the Creek, and the Seminole. And then you have the Iroquois Confederacy, the Northeast United States, the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, I think that's how you say that, Cayuga, and Seneca. The 6th nation, the Tuscarora, joined later, which is why it is also known as the 6 Nations. Now, these are the more prominently known, Indian nations or tribes and things of that nature. But in totality, they all are the Northern Kingdom, right? It's more of these wars. Then 1785 to 1795, you had the Northwest Indian War, right? The Northwest Indian War, also known by other names, was an armed conflict for control of the Northwest Territory. There was vast amount of land that Gad and Reuben had taken over, right? Had lived on before the so-called white man had ever come to this part of the earth. And you did in ancient times, you had Hamites, Olmecs came to this part of the world, but we controlled vast amounts of territory, right? But fought between the United States and a united group of Native American nations, known today as the Northwest Confederacy. We just went into that. The United States Army considers it the first of the American Indian War. So although there were wars before this, the U.S. for some reason classifies this as the first of the American Indian War. Following centuries of conflict for control of this region, the land comprising the Northwest Territory was granted in 1783 to the new United States by the Kingdom of Great Britain in Article 2 of the Treaty of Paris. Let's go into this Treaty of Paris. Mind you, man, the white man always creates some damn treaty or agreement to give somebody control or dominance over something that they don't even earn. How are you all the way in Paris, right, under King George, and you are making treaties to control a territory in America, so-called America? But the Treaty of Paris signed by representatives of King George III of Great Britain and representatives of the United States on September 3rd, 1783, officially ended the War of American Independence and recognized the 13 colonies, which had been part of colonial British America, to be free, sovereign, and independent unified states. So here you have our Gadite, Semonite brothers and sisters over here in the land, and you had these Israelites come across the land, want to be free, and they don't want to be subjects anymore. And let me get this quick precept, man. This is how you know. And Yahushua said it best, right? Matthew 12:25. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And Esau is divided against themselves, y'all. Their house is not going to stand. Didn't it say that they call lands after their name, right? They call lands after their own names. I want to get that quick precept real quick. Their inward thought is that they're going to last forever, right? With the Psalms 49, I want it in KJV. Psalms 49 and 11. Their inward thought is, I'm going to read up, matter of fact. Psalms 49, and I'm going to start with verse 8. For the redemption of their soul is precious, and it ceaseth forever. It's talking about the Israelites. That he should live forever and not see corruption. For he seeth that wise men die, likewise the fool, and the brutish person perish, and leave their wealth to others. This is going about the other nations. They're brutish. Brutish goes into sleep, right? Lacking compassion, you know, and leave their wealth to others. They leave generational wealth. They conquer and pillage land. They uproot culture. They sign treaties over things that aren't theirs. And then they leave an inheritance to their progenitors, to their generation. Their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own name. Nevertheless, man being in honor abideth not, he is like the beast that perish. This their way is their father, yet their posterity approve their things. So even their children, their offspring, approve their philosophy. Hey, they don't want to give up their land that they inherited from rape, robbery, and pillage. And this is why we say that they have to pay for their forefathers, because they're still reaping the benefit of their forefathers, right? I want to get back into this though. So when you go back into this Treaty of Paris, you have to know and realize and understand that all of these things are tools and historical events that the Most High has used to bring forth the prophet. These are not isolated events like Great Britain is just in control and they decided to conquer the Gadites and the mighty warriors. No, these are things that are punishment and that the Most High has put on us for breaking His law, statutes, and commandments. So let's get back into showing how from Genesis 49 chapter, when we go into the punishment of Gad and the prophecy of showing who are these troops that would overcome Gad. So we went to the American Revolutionary War, the Cherokee American War, the Northwest Indians War, the Nickajack Expedition in 1794. So 1794, you have the Nickajack Expedition, was a long-running battle fought from late summer to fall between American frontiersmen and the Chickamauga Cherokee. This Cherokee band had resisted the increasing American encroachment into their territory and raided American settlements in the region. And you know, a lot of our Gadite brothers and our Reubenite brothers and sisters, they knew the land. You got to think they spent hundreds of years on the land way before any settlers came here. You know, they had an abundance of food. They knew the natural landscape. And these were real warriors, right? The military expedition was a decisive success for the American settlers of what was then called the Southwest Territory. Let's get into this. And when you see the Southwest Territory, this goes into the Southwest Territory, territory of territory south of the River Ohio, the Ohio River, more commonly known as the Southwest Territory or the Old Southwest Territory, was an organized, incorporated territory of the United States. This is a better depiction of it. Where's that flag? That right here. So, territory of the original 13 states. The Louisiana Purchase. This whole area was purchased from France in 1803, known as the Louisiana Purchase. All of this was Gadite land. You had Mexico all up here. You had Mexico used to be all up here. You see Mexican secession, 1848. Mexico seceded to the United States. You had the Oregon Territory, 1846, for a treaty with Great Britain. All of this was Gadite land. Texas annexation, the former Republic of Texas, Spanish colony, right? That they annexed into the United States. Then you had where a lot of the Reubenites were down here in Florida. All right. So just to give a little bit of geographical context to what we're going in right now, to what we're going through. So bam. But that was the Nickajack expedition, right? Following a 1777 peace treaty between Native Americans and American settlers of the Overhill settlement west of the Appalachian Mountains during the American War of Independence. And you know, we always hear peace settlement, right? But what does the book of Sirach tell us? There can be no peace. Never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his peace, right? It says, though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him. And thou shalt be unto him as if thou hadst right for looking glass. And thou shalt know that his rust have not been altogether wiped away. And this is another thing the Most High, because of our disobedience, turned us over, our Northern Kingdom brothers as well, and sisters over to a reprobate mind, to actually trust the enemies. There's no what they say, there's no honor among thieves. Esau has been a thief since the beginning. You can't trust him. No matter how many times he goes crouching and humble, and you can't trust him. These are the same people who did this. He's called polio. I'm spelling it wrong. He's spelling polio on blanket. It's warfare. Warfare, right? The term polio on blankets. Look, it's a misunderstanding. The historical reference is to smallpox. Okay, smallpox, which are blankets intentionally given to Native Americans that were infected with smallpox. This act of biological warfare, most famously associated with the 1763 siege of Fort Pitt, aimed to spread the disease and reduce the Native American population. Right? Now, this is, look, biological warfare. Early biological warfare, right? It says, reading on. While there is debate, sure it is, over the extent of deliberate distribution, smallpox was a deadly epidemic for Native Americans. And you see Esau in the AI overviews put what they want. There's no debate over the extent of deliberate distribution. On one hand, you just admitted that intentionally given to Native Americans. But now you're saying there's a debate over whether the extent of the distribution of the blanket, the smallpox, was actually deliberate or not. You can't trust your enemy, man. Never trusted thy enemy, right? It definitely was deliberate, y'all. It definitely was deliberate. Let's get into more. We're gonna go to the Sabine expedition. Once again, the Sabine expedition. The Sabine expedition was an expedition approved by the United States Congress in 1806. They always passed some type of bill to expand, to conquer, to pillage, to rape, to rob, to murder, right? It says, reading on, it was led by Major Edmund Pendleton Gaines. It consisted of volunteers provided by Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Tennessee, including militia from Fayetteville in Lincoln Country, or Athens in McMinn Country. Their main goal was to protect the Sabine River as the boundary between Spanish Texas and Louisiana territory was undecided. So let's bring some context to this. Who were they protecting it from? Our Gadite brothers and sisters, our Reubenite brothers and sisters. That's why they have militia. A militia is, look, a military paramilitia force. What does it say? That comprises civilian members as opposed to a professional standing army of regular full-time military personnel. And even nowadays, you see a lot of Edomites who have militia. Look at this. Top militia in America. You have national group. Look, the Southern Poverty Law Center identified 334 militia groups at their peak in 2011. 276 in 2015, up from 202 in 2014. So this hasn't even been really updated, right? But a lot of the top militias, Arizona Border Recon is a American paramilitary militia group in Arizona composed of former military, law enforcement, and private security contractors. So you have all of these different militia groups, right? But these militia groups are normally consist of, the so-called white man arming themselves with guns. Now, when you think about a militia is normally has a goal or an agenda to try to protect something from something. Now, we all are supposed to be Americans, the air quote, right? We're all supposed to be equal in America. What the hell are they protecting from? Protecting what from what? These militia groups are trying to oppress, and they really racist. They really want to, a lot of them are racist out in the open. So, that's what these militia groups go into, but this is nothing new under the sun. We see that these militias have always been around, even in the ancient times, even in the early colonial times, to try to subdue, conquer, murder, right, the Northern Kingdom. So as we go into, these things, remember, Columbus had a militia. Christopher Columbus, he didn't come over here selling the ocean blues and trying to make friends. He came with the thought of conquering in his head, right? Civilizing the savages. Militia. So this was the Sabine expedition. Let's move forward. Now, you have a big war that started in 1811 around 1815 called the War of 1812. This was another major, I'm going to get some of these images too, right? See these major battles and things of that nature that included the British, you had the American, I believe you had France and other countries that contributed soldiers, but you had a lot of our Gadite brothers and Reubenite brothers and sisters that were fighting alongside of, some of them chose the British side, some of them chose the American side, but ideally they were fighting to try to keep their sovereignty, try to keep their land. And once again, this is all going into Genesis 49 when the Most High said that Gad would be overthrown by a troop, right? That Gad would be overthrown by a troop. But we know Yahushua in the end is going to allow Gad to prevail. By Shem Yahushua. Let's get back to it. So you have the War of 1812 was fought by the United States and its allies against the United Kingdom and the allies in North America. It began when the United States declared war on Britain on 18th of June in 1812. Although peace terms were agreed upon in the December of 1814 Treaty of Ghent, I believe that's how you say that, the war did not officially end until the peace treaty was ratified in the United States Congress of 17th of February of 1815. So you had a lot of American Indians. You see the Muskogee, right? Muskogee, which this is one of the 5 major tribes. They fought in there, and a lot of the First Nation Indians or so-called Native Americans, Gadites, were allies, right? In August 1814, British troops captured Washington. Before American victories at Baltimore and Plattsburgh, I think that's how you say that, in September ended fighting in the north. In the southeastern United States, American forces and Indian allies defeated an anti-American faction of the Muskogee. And you see, this is true. You know, we even had inner fighting among each other. When all of the nations, as far as the so-called Native Americans, should have been united against the Edomites, you see, you had brothers fighting against brothers. You had the Muskogee, who took up a confederacy with as American forces, right? Defeated an anti-American faction. So you had the Muskogee who were anti-American. And they didn't want so-called white men to come over here and to conquer. But you had these what did it say? You had American forces and other Indian allies, right? You had certain tribes that were fighting against their brothers in favor of, you know, so-called white men. The Treaty of Ghent was signed in December 1814. Though it would be February before word reached the United States and the treaty was fully ratified. In the interim, American troops led by Andrew Jackson, repulsed a major British attack on New Orleans. The origins of the War of 1812 began in the United States and the British Empire and its First Nation allies. And we kind of went into, you know, who was considered the First Nation allies, because a lot of the British, you gotta understand, like a lot of Canada was Britain, was ruled by the British. Even now, even today, you have a heavy influence of Great Britain in Canada, right? Let's get this really quick. So Great Britain and Canadian, Canada and Great Britain influences Great Britain influence on Canada. Probably better. Look, Great Britain's influence on Canada is profound, particularly through its political and legal systems, which established Canada as a self-governing dominion within the British Empire, eventually leading to its complete independence. So you got to know that when we go back into the history of the War of 1812, and you see these First Nations, these were Gadite and Reubenite brothers that were distributed primarily in British Canada, or British Columbia, as they also call it, you know, Canada, right? These First Nations. So you had, it says total population, let's go down right here. Here it is. First Nations, French, Première Nation, is a term used to identify indigenous people in Canada. who are neither Inuit or Métis. Traditionally, First Nations in Canada were peoples who lived south of the tree line and mainly south of the Arctic Circle. There are 634 recognized First Nations governments or bands across Canada. Roughly half are located in the provinces of Ontario and British Columbia. So you see that when just to bring context, so when you see where it says right here about the First Nations right here, the origin of the War of 1812 between the United States and British Empire and its First Nation allies have been long debated. Multiple factors led to the U.S. declaration of war on Britain that began the War of 1812. So you even had Israelites that were known as the Gadite tribes up north in Canada who were fighting alongside the British, who were fighting against the Americans, right? The Americans were nothing but Great Britain, but the British who separated and came on this side. So you had certain First Nation troops that were allied with Great Britain, and then you had certain Native American tribes that were allied with the colonial powers called the 13 colonies, and they were fighting against their own brothers and sisters. And then you had certain, like the Muskogee, I believe that's how you say it, those tribes which were anti-American. So although they weren't allied with the British, they were fighting against the colonialists in America. So by proxy, the enemy of your enemy is my friend type stuff. You follow me? So let's move on. So the next war we're going to cover is the Creek Wars. These are the Creek Indians, right? So the Creek Wars, also the Red Stick War or the Creek Civil War, was a regional conflict between opposing Native American factions, European powers in the United States during the early 19th century. See, Esau knows how to creep in. Very crafty. I'm going to get this precept too. Well, we got to remember, right? We got to remember this, y'all. The Most High told us way back in Genesis, in the 25th chapter, this. And the Genesis 25 and 27. And the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man, dwelling in tents. So we got to think, y'all, Esau is a cunning hunter, and he knows how to trap. Esau knows warfare. That was one of his blessings. And he knows warfare, y'all. He knows how to be surreptitiously, what is it called? Squirming, like a snake. He knows how to put this side against this side. He knows how to make certain treaties to box you in. He knows how to give you damn blankets on small pots or blankets. Esau is very crafty. He's a crafty hunter. And these are things that the Most High God has allowed because of our disobedience. These other nations to have these certain skill sets when it comes to warfare against us, to conquer us, to oppress us. The curses. You gotta realize the curses are prophetic as well in themselves, right? So back to it. So the Creek Wars. The Esau is good at turning your own people against your own people, right? And he sometimes does it, and this reminds me even of this prophecy in Babylon. I mean in Revelation, because you have the great merchants. Revelations 18 and 11. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. Now the reason why I went here is because when you think about a lot of these wars and things with Esau and with America and these world powers, they did a lot of bartering and a lot of really like bribery almost. You got to think, if I come with this apparatus right here, let's say you've never seen this before, and you come with something like, let's say you come with something like, let's say this is a spear. I come with you with something that look like this, like a damn gun. Now this isn't a gun. This is a little stand for the camera, right? But nevertheless, as an example, if you're fighting with this, and I'm bringing you this, you're definitely gonna come to my side, right? You're gonna look at this as a gift. Man, they gave me power, but really, I'm giving you this so you can be my ally, right? And as soon as you think you're gonna turn this against me, I got thousands more of these. So Esau is very cunning with his negotiation skills, with this treaties and allegiances, with his merchandise. His merchandise is very deceptive merchandise. The Creek Wars begin as a conflict within the tribes of the Muskogee. Now, peep this. You notice you keep saying the Muskogee. Let's tap into this real quick. Muskogee, also known as Muskogee or Muskogee Creek, or just the Creek, in the Muskogee Creek Confederacy, in the Muskogee language, are a group of related indigenous people of the southeastern woodland in the United States. Their historical homelands are in what now comprise southern Tennessee, much of Alabama, West Georgia, and parts of northern Florida. So the Muskogee, right? And look at this, y'all. Oftentimes when you see things, look, they got the frimmies, bell frimmies, part of their ancient heritage, part of their ancient heritage. But you have these various Native American, these Gadite groups, right, that had a lot of inner fighting as well. We see that nowadays as well, just in between the tribes alone. You got families fighting with families. You have this family doesn't want to go over this family's house. You got this side of the family don't deal with this side of the family over crazy stuff, But reading on. But the United States quickly became involved. British traders, look what I told you when we went to that Revelation 18. Traders, always about some type of merchandise. British traders and Spanish colonial officials in Florida supplied the Red Sticks with weapons and equipment due to their shared interest in preventing the expansion of the United States into regions under their control. The Creek War took place largely in modern-day Alabama and along the Gulf Coast. Major engagements in the war involved the United States military and the Red Stick, or the Upper Creeks, and the Muskogee tribal factions who resisted U.S. territorial expansion. The United States formed an alliance with the traditional enemies of the Muskogee, the Choctaw and the Cherokee Nation. So here they are, utilizing weapons as trade, putting this enemy against this enemy, this tribe against this tribe, but they're in the middle, right, allowing them to kill each other so that they can take over both of their territories. Once again, a troop shall overcome you, Gad, but you shall overcome an enemy. If you return back to the Most High by Shema Mashiach, woman like ever strong. Now we're gonna go and get some more wars, y'all. We're gonna get some more wars. So you have in Illinois territory in the War of 1812, you have this war called, I think, call it Peoria, right? And when you go into Peoria, matter of fact, when I was younger, we had a family reunion in Chicago. And the family reunion actually was in Peoria, Illinois. Now, I'm not knowing that this has anything to do with our history or anything of that nature, but I do remember we actually went to Peoria, Illinois. It's not far outside of modern day Chicago. But during the War of 1812, the Illinois territory was the scene of fighting between Native Americans and the United States soldiers and settlers. The Illinois Territory at that time included the areas of modern Illinois, Wisconsin, and parts of Minnesota and Michigan, right? Tensions in the Illinois Territory, in the Illinois Territory between U.S. settlers and Native Americans were on the rise in the years before the War of 1812. At Peoria, Potawatomi, Chief Maine Pot, was a supporter of the resistance movement of Shawnee Prophet Tinskanatawa and his brother Tecumseh. A lot of people heard about Tecumseh, right? He was a Shawnee chief that was a wolf. Now this Tinskanatawa, I'm not sure who this was. Tinskawatawa, also called Tinskatawa, it says was a Native American religious and political leader of the Shawnee tribe, known as the Prophet, Gadite Prophet, or the Shawnee Prophet. He was a young brother of Tecumseh, a leader of the Shawnee. And in his early years, Tinskatawa was given the name Lalawethika, to make the loud noise, or the noise man. But he changed it around 1805 and transformed himself from a hapless alcoholic youth into an influential spiritual leader. Tinskawatawa denounced the Americans, and this Gadite brother denounced the Americans, calling them the offspring of the evil spirit. Look at this. Evil spirit. You can't make this up. Hey, this brother, I'm led to believe, was a prophet. Right? Now, was he a prophet of the Most High? That's a different thing. Right? But I'm led to believe the Most High put that in his spirit. He knew that Esau was the offspring of the evil spirit and led a purification movement that promoted unity among the indigenous people of North America. Rejected acculturation, what this word means. I'm not sure what this word means. Acculturation. Slovakia. Oh, there was a thing. Assimilation to a different culture, typically the dominant. Okay, so he was based how you say that? Tinskawatawa was against assimilation, right? This reminds me of this. What's that, First Maccabees in 19? And this brother was against it. Let me see this. 1 second. Bam. Is that 1 in 19 that I want? No, that's not. Let me get it. I know it's in the first chapter, y'all. Bam. Where is that at? I'm gonna show you what this brother was against. 1 second. Bam. Right here. Wait, no, that's not it. One second. Bear with me, y'all. It says, and some of them were so forward. Is that in this? No, that's in First Maccabees, ain't it? Slovakia. Reminds me of how during the time of the Grecians, here it is, 11, Slovakia, 11. In those days went out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, for since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this brother wasn't moving in that type of spirit. This brother didn't want any type of assimilation with, the heathen. He didn't want acculturation. He rejected acculturation to the American way of life and encouraged his followers to pursue traditional ways. Now we know that by this time, our Northern Kingdom brothers have still been in idolatry, right? Although, when we look at certain things like the I want to get this, the Lost Lunas Decalogue, probably spelling this wrong, y'all. Stone right here. Now, of course they say this is a hoax, right? Of course they say this is a hoax, y'all. because they don't want you to know that the Northern Kingdom, that the so-called Native Americans are Israelites. But look up this, right? The Lost Wonders Decalogue Stone is a large boulder in New Mexico with a Hebrew inscription that appears to be an abbreviated version of the Ten Commandments. Look, while some claim it proves ancient Semitic contact with the Americans, the mainstream archaeological consensus, of course, mainstream archaeological consensus is basically saying white America. White America is gonna reject anything that remotely, in any inkling, it could be anything that remotely states or purports that the so-called Native Americans were Israelites. Of course they're going to reject that. That doesn't fit their narrative. Because if they're the Israelites, then who the hell is over in Israel right now? You see how none of that adds up, right? But nevertheless, I went here to show you that all Gadites weren't in idolatry. You had some Gadites in certain tribes that still, through the Spirit, were upholding certain laws, statutes, and commandments. Like even when you go into, right, let's get this real quick, Native American fringes. But look, I want to go to Etsy. I'm going to go to Etsy right now. But if you look, even still in some of their culture today, they got the fringes. The remnant, right? Now they don't have the ribbon of blue on there and things of that. But look, hey, Ak right here got the ribbon of blue. Ribbon of blue got the fringes with the ribbon of blue. So a lot of these things, these customs, right? Look, the fringes. It's not a coincidence. Not a coincidence at all. All right. So we can't say that every Gadite or Reubenite was damn just this Jack your heart right here, y'all. I might have to go back and copy this. This Jack your heart. But we can't just say that everybody was everybody was rejecting the law and commandments, right? But the Most High put a mighty spirit on that brother, though. I will say that, at least in that aspect, right? He wanted to reject the acculturation and didn't want to go in with what's the name, right? The Indians, and no, we not no damn Israelites. They were dark-skinned colonizers. They shared the same complexion. Hey, brother, look, it's sad. It's very sad, brother, in the chat. Stop the BS. We know the truth now. We know y'all some colonizing ass niggas. Wow. American Indian kid. Hey, brother, and it's unfortunate that you're just so lost and you even calling yourself an American and an Indian. Come on now. That's madness. And that goes back to, let me get this verse. Right? Let me get this verse. In the book of Isaiah. Right? You leave your name for a curse. Right? Book of Isaiah 65 and 15. And ye shall leave your name for a curse unto my children. For the Lord God shall slay thee and call his servants by another name. And now we got our Gadite brothers and sisters. Now look, regardless of if this brother has the understanding or not that he's our people, right? It's just unfortunate. Your religious doctrine ain't gonna work, my boy. It's just unfortunate, man, that brothers don't understand. It's the difference between religious doctrine, history, archaeology, and prophecy. This brother probably doesn't even know about second Ezra. He probably doesn't even know how his people came over here, right? Y'all so-called God promised y'all land, but had to take it from other people, so y'all not original to a landmass. Listen, this brother has lost his rabbit mind, man. And this is what I mean in terms of the prophecy. It's going to come a time where ignorant brothers like this, they're either destroyed or the Most High is going to bring the light and the knowledge to them where they stop rejecting their true culture and their true heritage. Literally, you can't make this up. You got a brother on here. We showing the history, the archaeology, and the prophecy on how the Most High God took the northern kingdom, who was in idolatry, right? Excuse me, and fulfilling the curses that was spoken about through the book of Deuteronomy. This brother is so lost, man. And then they even talk about the Most High had to take our land. Brother, the Most High, our land is the Levant, the Nile to the Euphrates, the land of Canaan, right? So look, we're gonna continue with the wars, man. We're not gonna let Satan come in immediately, trying to distract in the chat, man. Soldier, get him. We're not gonna let pray for our brothers, because a lot of our Gadite brothers, they lost. They didn't want to be with the so-called white man, right? They want to buck up against their true brothers and sisters, not even knowing that we were on the plantations together. Hey, this is history. We're not talking about. Let me get this real quick. Let me get this real quick. One second. And African slave. Why you think a lot of people say they got Indian in their blood, right? It's a historical fact. Both Native American and African people were enslaved and forced to work on plantations in the Americas, right? It's a known fact. So when brothers and sisters go, and we love our Gadite and our Reubenite brothers and sisters, but a lot of them, especially a lot of the younger generation, they damn lost. They have no understanding, right? They haven't, let me get this Job 8:8. They haven't sought out the history of their forefathers. They haven't done that, right? Like the scriptures say, Job 8:8, ask the former generation and find out what their ancestors learned. A lot of these brothers and sisters, they don't have the knowledge. They don't have the understanding, man. They don't have, name one African slave brought here. Let's debate. Hey, listen, if you want to have a formal debate, brother or sister, I'm led to believe you're a brother or sister. Hey, we can set up a time. Right now, we going in through the wars of our people, the so-called Native Americans, the so-called Gadites. In fact, it just came out, I forget what tribe it was, that emphatically said, look, us and the Negroes, we the same people. So this must be one of them. I'm led to believe the spirit that this brother or sister got, they must be a $5 Indian. They probably not really a so-called Gadite. Probably somebody who got a so-called white daddy in their bloodline, right? Probably one of them people who are not moving through the spirit. All right, let's get back to it though. We don't want to get distracted by Satan and his devices. We're gonna pray for you, brother. If you really is a brother, you got to repent and come back to your heritage. I'm melanated, but I'm not an Israelite. I'm American Indian mixed with, look, you see that? I'm American Indian mixed with European melanated and pale European. You see that? I knew it. I knew it. The spirit bears witness that he's not the children of God. You are the seed of your father. Let's move on. We ain't gonna go get too hype, man. We start trying to distract. All right. So the first Seminole War, next war, the first Seminole War. Let me scroll up. The Seminole War. Now, when you get into the Seminoles, y'all, that goes into the tribe of Reuben, the Reubenites, and they'll tell you. Matter of fact, I did some business down in Florida with the Seminoles and with the Seminole tribe. They'll tell you that they trace themselves back to the Israelites. So don't let them Esau come in trying to shake things up and be a distraction and say that they're not. Of course you're not an Israelite. You're damn European and pale-faced melanated, right? We get into it. The Seminole Wars, also known as the Florida Wars, were a series of 3 military conflicts between the United States and the Seminoles that took place in Florida between about 1816 and 1858. The Seminoles are a Native American nation which coalesced in northern Florida during the early 1700s. And the Seminoles, man, look, I'm going to skip down here. It says, the First Seminole War, when American General Andrew Jackson led an incursion into the territory over Spanish subjection. Jackson's forces destroyed several Seminole, Mukasuki, and Black Seminole towns, as well as captured Fort San Marcos and briefly occupied Pensacola before withdrawing in 1818. The U.S. and Spain soon negotiated the transfer of the territory with the Adams-Onis Treaty of 1890. Let's get into this. Black Seminoles, right? Afro-Seminoles are an ethnic group of mixed Native American African origin associated with the Seminole people in Florida and Oklahoma. Now, little do you know, obviously you have, when it says Black Seminoles, you have to take it in context, right? You have what they call free Africans, but we know that the so-called Africans that were taken on ships and brought over to the Americas and the Caribbeans were also Israelites, right? And we know, even if we look at, I'm going to get this real quick in case you didn't know, right? Let's look at the Negro land map. A lot of the things you have to go into your ancient cartography and things of that nature to look at the ancient map, right? And I want to show y'all something really quick. If I can get a full version of the map, I want to show y'all something too. Why we hold this position. All right, bam. I think this is the one I want. So when you look at these various maps, right? And when you look right here, I'm gonna try to zoom in. When you look at the Negro land maps, because what is known as, okay, bam, this might be a better view. All right, when you look at the Negro land map, you had the Gold Coast. This is where you have like modern day Ghana, Sierra Leone, Guinea, Equatorial Guinea, what is it called? Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire, so forth and so on. So when you go into these maps and you look, you notice that you had the kingdom of Songhai and Mali, that where they came and got their gold from and their rice from and their cattle from is the same place they got the slaves from. Slave coast. And it's somewhere in here. Let me see if I can find it on this particular map, where it literally says the kingdom of Judah, right? Because why? Because we knew that they knew they were Israelites. These weren't the Nilotic African tribes. And when you even do the research of the fall of Israel in 70 AD, when we migrated from North Africa all the way to West Africa, and then we're put on ships. So let me see if I can find this on this map. This one's a little cloudy, but it's literally, where is it? It's the kingdom of Judah. One second. See if I can find it. If I can find. Matter of fact, let me do this. Judah land. Bam. See this? Right here. Kingdom of Judah. So we know that when back in context, when you say, or when they say, when referring to the Black Seminoles, and you have them on here saying African mixed with Native Americans, these are all just Israelites. Because we know that the so-called Africans that were brought over here weren't Nilotic Africans. They weren't Hamitic Africans. They were Israelites that were taken from that coast. Why do you think when people push the narrative and say black people sold black people, that's true if you're looking at the skin complexion. But you have to be scholarly, and you have to look at it and understand it from the perspective of bloodline. You had the Hamites, so the Israelites that were dwelling in that land. And when you get an opportunity, there's a book, y'all, a very good book. Do I have it sitting down here? It's probably in my, but it's called Babylon. I'm gonna show y'all this book real quick. You definitely want to get this read. Babylon to Timbuktu by Rudolph R. Winter. Right here. It's a very a must read, y'all. A must read right here. From Babylon to Timbuktu by Rudolph R. Winter. A very, very highly respected scholar, right? And there's a lot of the history that goes in terms of showing you how the so-called Africans that were taken in the transatlantic slave trade were actually Israelites, and how the tribes around them. Now, we're not saying that one or two, three or four, a couple few actually Hamites could have got mixed in there, but for the most part in totality, you know, you have Israelites who are subjugated to as slaves being sold by the actual Nilotic, by the Hamitic Africans. I want to get this term right. In Nilotic, relating to the Nile River or the Nile region of Africa. So the Nilos, the Saharan, you know, Egypt, Sudan, South Sudan, Kenya, Tanzania. A lot of those Nilotic people, those are actually Cushites, Hamites, right? Those aren't actual Israelites that moved to the west coast of Africa. Not just the west coast, because we are spread to the four corners, but we're talking about traditionally where those tribes are in totality, what nation of people or heritage or bloodline or seed line those particular tribes are from. Right? Let's get back to it. Get back to the creative party. How about you guys? So when you get an opportunity, definitely you want to check out these Negro land maps. You definitely want to check out these Negro land maps. Get back to it. So you had the Black Seminole. They're mostly blood descendants of Seminole people, Greek Africans, and escaped former slaves were allied with Seminole groups in Spanish Florida. Their history includes a continuous struggle against invasion and enslavement while preserving their distinct cultural and reconnecting with their relatives through the African diaspora. Many have Seminole lineage, but due to the stigma of having mixed origin, where there's no such thing as mixed origin, you are who your father is. In case you didn't know, get numbers 1 8. And this is why it's so important, right? This is why it's so important to seek out the biblical understanding, or else you'll be running around saying, hey, I'm a Native American and a European. No, you are the seed of your father. Numbers 1 and 18. And they assembled all the congregation together on the first day of the second month. And they declared their pedigree, their bloodline, after their family. Let's see how. By the house of their fathers. So you declare your bloodline and your pedigree by the house of your father. If you're from the tribe of Reuben, through your father's lineage, you're a Reuben. If you're from the tribe of Simeon, through your father's lineage, and you lay with a woman from the tribe of Reuben, you're a Simeonite, but you're still an Israelite. If that makes sense. But we got one more war that we're going to go over, and that is, actually, I got about 3 more. So Winnebago War, the Winnebago War. The Winnebago War, also known as the Winnebago Uprising, was a brief conflict that took place in 1827 in the upper Mississippi River region of the United States. Primarily, it was primarily in what is now the state of Wisconsin. Not quite a war. The hostilities were limited to a few attacks on American civilians by a portion of Winnebago or Ho-Chunk Native American tribe. The Ho-Chunks were reacting to a wave of lead miners trespassing on their land, and to false rumors that the United States had sent 2 Ho-Chunk prisoners to a rival tribe for execution. So you see right here, there were a lot of different wars going on. Hey, Gad wasn't getting down with them coming and raping and pillaging and trying to take resources off of their land, right? Let's get another one. We got the Black Hawk War. The Black Hawk War, right? The Black Hawk War was a conflict between the United States and Native Americans, led by Black Hawk, a Sioux leader. The war erupted after Black Hawk and a group of Sioux, Meskwakis, I think that's how you talk about that, in Kickapoo, known as the British Band, crossed the Mississippi River to the U.S. state of Illinois. Now notice we read earlier that Illinois used to not even be a part of the U.S. until it was annexed after Peoria, from Iowa Indian Territory in April 1832. Black Hawk's motives were ambiguous, but he was apparently hoping to reclaim land that was taken over by the United States in the disputed 1804 Treaty of St. Louis. So many damn treaties, yo. U.S. officials convinced the British band was hostile, mobilized a frontier militia, another militia, and opened fire on the delegation from the Native Americans on May 14, 1832. A Black Hawk was inhabited, responded by successfully attacking the militia at the Battle of Stillman's Run. He led his band to a secure location in what is now southern Wisconsin and was pursued by the U.S. forces. Meanwhile, other Native Americans conducted raids against forts and colonies, largely unprotected with the absence of militia. So once again, y'all, we have been going over through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahweh. I'm about to go ahead and wrap it up. Lord willing, this has been edifying. Hey, don't get tricked. Hey, don't let the so-called white man or the so-called Native American brothers or sisters who are lost in idolatry and just stupidity, right? You gotta pray for these brothers and sisters, right? But don't let none of them convince y'all that so-called Native Americans are not Israelites. Prove it biblically, prophecy, historically, right? Even, the wildest thing is this, and this is just a logical thing when you think about it, right? This is a very logical thing. No one can tell you, and even in wide and mainstream academia, they let you know that life did not start in the Americas. Life didn't start over here. Where did life start at? In the Fertile Crescent and the Levant, the region which you would call so-called Africa. So even when you talk about people who are thought of as so-called Native Americans being over here in America, they're not native to this part of the world. How did they get here? Where did they come from? Read 2nd Esdras, the 13th chapter, and it'll give you all the answer. So with that, we want to give you all praises, honor, and glory to the Most High God, Yahweh. We do so in the name of his only begotten Son, Mashiach Wamalak Yahushai, to the 12 tribes that scattered abroad. Greetings. Hey, and to the person in the chat, if you really want to have a debate, man, drop your email address. We'll set it up. We'll set it up. F you, stop lying to my people. Listen, brother, if you are a brother, right, then get some knowledge. You're the colonizers, right? Hey, look, put your email address. Matter of fact, hey, soldier, drop the email address in the chat. Matter of fact, I'll drop it. Email address is in the chat. If you really want to have a debate, you really want to come on here and talk, matter of fact, hey, the link is in the chat. 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 Click the link. link is in the chat. See that? You click the link that's in the chat. That's how you join the talk. Click the link that's in the chat. Shalom, shalom. Zazad the Zealot. Call on your question, Abishai. Click the link. The link is in the chat. See that? You see that? All praise to the Most High, man. You don't want no smoke yet. Look, all praise to the Most High. How about you now? Abishai, Lord willing, this has been edifying to the 12 tribes that scattered abroad. Greetings from Yashala.